Have you ever noticed that how when we travel, especially Black Generation X, we travel just a little differently? And it's important to understand that when we're talking about how we travel, we're also traveling based on the knowledge and the experience that we gained from listening to our parents as well as our grandparents. And this isn't about paranoia, it's about survival. One of the dangers that we run into today, and I see it a lot when I get various comments, is we kind of work and move in this space where we think that the things that happened in the past can't happen now. Now, it's not trying to imply that you have to be paranoid of your shadow or every waking place you turn, there's dangers there. But there is this narrative that has happened that since we've now moved into this new multicultural space, that a lot of the things that happened in the past can't happen today. But the thing that we often overlook, and I've stressed this on a variety of different videos, is that even though we saw a change in the law and a change in the infrastructure, we keep forgetting that there are people who are here who are resistant to those changes. They're still here. They haven't died off. And so what happens is that because they no longer have vehicles that are readily available to them, or they no longer are part of a culture that allowed them to display their hatred or their perceptions about certain things. We think that because they no longer have those things that their hearts and minds have changed. That's not the case. They've now had to adjust how they present those things, knowing that they're in a culture that no longer will accept those things. So it's important to recognize that even though the laws and institutions have changed, those people and those attitudes they had, some people may have changed accordingly, but there's a great number of people who didn't. And you got to keep in mind how these things actually played out. Like, I'll give you a great example. My dad's cousin once told me she grew up in Durant, Mississippi, which is in the heart of the Deep South. And at a young age, she moved to Chicago, which is where she spent a good deal of her formative years. But there were times where she would return back to Durant, Mississippi to see some of her family members. And she had communicated to me that when she, back in the 50s and 60s, would return back to Mississippi, that they actually had to have a speech where their parents would sit down with them and say, okay, we're going back to Mississippi. Here's how you need to be mindful about how you move. That wasn't about trying to scare them. It was recognizing that they were living in this time period where there was still open hostilities against people of color. Open hostilities against Black people, full stop. And this was not just unique for her. My mom's cousin, who relocated to Kalamazoo, Michigan, similar things. Whenever she would return to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, she had to be mindful that she was no longer in a particular space where there might have been people who are more agreeable to operating in an integrated society, to moving into a space where they were openly hostile towards that reality. So imagine being in a situation where you are people where you have to literally be mindful of how you move. That the moment you cross an imaginary line into a different part of the country, you had to adjust the way you spoke, the way you moved, the way you interacted, because the things you did could literally put your life on the line in a moment's notice. If any of you have ever studied Emmett Till and the tragedy that happened to him, one of the things that you will find from doing your research is that there was an indication that he was informed, a young man who, for those of you who don't know, this is a young man who came from up north. I think he was Chicago. I might be remiss. And he came down south, and unfortunately, an allegation that he did something inappropriate with a white woman resulted in him getting killed. But the reality is that his family members actually had to educate him about how to maneuver, because this was his first time coming to the South. My understanding was this was his first time coming to the South. Think about that reality. We often look at the Emmett Tills of the world, and there's going to be segments of society saying that's an exception because it was such a sad thing. But that was a reality for Black people during this time period. So imagine that happening in the 50s and the 60s when this happened. And then imagine 1996, me being stationed in North Carolina being told, be careful when you go to this particular county. Or even later on in 2008 being told, be careful when you go to this particular town. We have had a long-standing history of knowing that whether there are signs there or signs not there, whether there are billboards over here or Klan rallies over there, we had to learn how to inform each other to be aware of those spaces where the dangers may not have always been clear. So just as I indicated with my mom's cousin, as well as my dad's cousin, about knowing what you had to do in terms of conducting yourself when you travel into the South, this continued into the 80s, 90s, and even the 2000s. Because the reality is that regardless of how much we want to embrace the fact that as a country, we love to say that we're a multicultural society, there are still people in this country who still are opposed to that. We literally have had individuals recently brag about creating an all-white town, literally with the purpose of keeping others out. That's in 2025. Something we probably didn't think we would ever see. And so for the people who want to sit here and scream about, oh, those things can't happen back in the day here, well, they're happening here. So what do you do with that information? The thing that I like to stress to people when I'm going through this is the understanding that this is not about fear. It's about focus. This is not about making you paranoid. It's about making you aware. Let's be clear. In this great country, we would love to believe that at least 99% of this country is a safe space for multicultural individuals to move accordingly, but especially being black. But for black people, we had to learn the hard way. It's not the 99 we worry about. We have to be mindful of the 1%. Because even if there's 1% of this country that's hostile, we know that hostility is not about running you out or making you feel bad or making you feel uncomfortable. That 1% can result in you dying. So we learned early on, it's not about being paranoid. It's about being situationally aware, because the dangers weren't always clear. So we needed to know where they were. And so we relied upon the network of our experiences with individuals to let us know. So for those of you who want to post comments about, give me the proof, show it to me, you're being paranoid, you're stoking fears. It's not about stoking fears. It's about being aware of clear and present dangers. Because guess what? The one thing that came out of this new world order was that the people who were okay causing harm to us now were no longer visible. We didn't know who they were. And to act as if they just disappeared, faded off, or had changing hearts and minds, if you have that experience, that's great. But there have been way too many examples where we went in thinking the exact same thing and when found ourselves in harm's way. Remember, the lessons from the past, and these are history lessons, are not about emotional baggage. They're about blueprints. One of the things that I stress to people all the time, if I am articulating to you about specific instances in history, that is not baggage. If I'm giving you my opinion, that's in terms of how I feel, that may be the case. But if somebody tells me the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan lives here, or this was a county where they literally had a billboard with Klan signs up displayed, or this was a place where there are Klan rallies occurred, or the Klan marches here, or this is a place where literally there have been incidences of high arrest rates for people of color and black people in particular at a disproportionate rate towards anybody else. That is the evidence. That's the information that you need to be aware of. That has nothing to do with me dredging up the past or dividing or trying to present this image of saying, oh, you're just trying to divide us up as a people. No, because guess what? Marginalized groups, particularly black people, understand, and we learned a long time ago, that in order for us to be able to move safely, we have to know where are the safe spaces. For those of you out there who feel like you can move anywhere and not have to worry about it, I applaud you. Power to the people. But I can tell you, I'm a firm person who believes in learning from the history of the past as a blueprint for my future. And so I am not going to just willy-nilly disregard someone telling me to be careful. I'm going to trust if it's the case, but I'm also going to be mindful of the fact that there are still people, even today, who are hostile towards people that look like me. I don't know where they are, but if somebody else does and tells me, I'm going to take that in consideration and move accordingly. And I hope you do the same.